We're dealing with a situation where our enemy loves to exploit dysfunction, whose tactics include infiltrating families, friendship groups, businesses, and even places of worship by identifying the weakest link and using them as a means to an end. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Genesis, Part 9. When we left off, the men's meeting had been a success. True and Stephanie had been reconnected. Selima had reassured Stephanie that she was on the Jamaican issue. Bigwood and Angela had both gotten the information that they needed. And True had gotten an emotional boost from Bigwood's choice of rehabilitation music. When Angela and Q went to Regina's to collect their children, they got an earful, not just about the mission that Angela had put Regina and Anya on, but about the shenanigans between Miss Bernie and Mrs. Ali. Chantal had told Regina and Anya all about the tension and snide remarks being passed between the two older ladies. So Angela said, I got something for that. How about you and Anya go and help out the grandmother crew Friday? And I'm going to give Miss Bernie and Mrs. Ali some immersion therapy. So Friday morning, Angela showed up at the main house with her children in tow and pulled Miss Bernie and Mrs. Ali to the side. She said, you're supposed to be taking care of our children. That's not just about watching them and feeding them and making sure they don't get hurt. Making sure that the older kids are doing their schoolwork and making sure they all feel loved and safe. It's also about being a demonstration of the kind of grown-ups that we want them to be one day. If we didn't think that the elders in our family were capable of doing that, we would have hired professionals. Ms. Bernie said, Angela said, I know, you have a hard time with new people, especially when you think you know something about their faults. Well, Miss Bernie, I would not have entrusted my children to Mrs. Ali if I had any concerns about her loyalties or her morals. And since I know you are not going to take my word for it, because you never do, the two of you are being relieved of your duties. Mrs. Ali said, how I get fired? Angela said, you're not fired. The two of you are going to spend some one-on-one time together, and neither of you will be returning to work until you've worked through whatever this is. Mrs. Ali, I am sure that Miss Bernie has been a handful. I've known this woman for most of my life. I'm sure it's hard to believe, but she always means well. She used to be my chief of operations, but she had to be relieved of her duties because she couldn't separate business from personal. So we all thought it was best to just keep her in the personal realm, with the understanding that she would mind her business. Miss Bernie said, but Angela said, I already know what you're going to say. The babies are my business. And you're right. I love how you go to war behind me and mine. I love how you're one way about baby Bella. But do you remember what happened the last time you went overboard with all of the assumptions and acting like you knew things that you couldn't possibly know, and then failing to respond well? Miss Bernie just shook her head. Angela said, all's been forgiven, but we're all supposed to learn from our past experiences. We're dealing with a situation where our enemy loves to exploit dysfunction. We are literally facing an enemy whose tactics include infiltrating families, friendship groups, businesses, and even places of worship by identifying the weakest link and using them as a means to an end. Now, we have security in place and we're doing all the things that we need to do to prevent another infestation. But that requires that we all be a united front. I wish that I could just ask you to trust who I trust, but I know that that's unreasonable. We agreed years ago that I would give you all of the information that you needed to go with the program. And in this, there isn't any more information that I can give you. So instead, I'm going to give you some time off. But you have to use that time off getting to know the woman that you've clearly so unfairly judged, and letting her get to know you so that she can understand how you became so near and dear to my heart and how you got like this. Miss Bernie chuckled and Mrs. Ali said, I'd love the chance to find out the reason for all this. Because I assure you, Bernie, I am not who you think I am. And to be honest with you, Angela, the woman is about one smart remark away from writing a check her behind can't cash. Miss Bernie said, now you're not going to make too many more threats. Angela said, all right, ladies. I have work to do. I don't have time for all of this. There's a car waiting for you outside. Enjoy your day and make the best of your time. And then she walked out. When the ladies got outside, there was in fact a car waiting for them. When they got inside, Miss Bernie said, where are we going? And the driver said, Bedtime. Then to lunch at one of the family-friendly restaurants. Mrs. Ali asked, is this safe? Miss Bernie said, Bella owns Bedtime. And if we're going there, then security's already in place. As they rode from Denton to Fort Worth, Miss Bernie realized that the only way she was going to get out of this situation was to get through it. So she started it off. She said, okay, so I apologize. I know that I can come on too strong. I've known Angela and Stephanie since they were little children. Their mother was one of my best friends. And so we have it all out in the open. I'm a lesbian. And I was in love with her. She was straight. I had not come to terms with my sexuality. I was still in the closet. Losing her broke me. And I made it my mission to take care of her girls. They were adults, but it was a lot going on at that time. I had no idea just how much was going on. And I knew nothing about the girls' extended family. I made the mistake of trusting the wrong person. And that mistake put everybody in danger. Miss Bernie had met the Queen Mother's little sister, Jira, by what she thought was happenstance. And while she didn't share any intimate details about the family, she shared enough to give Jira the information that she needed to connect Pops Andy with his ex, India. India had been spirited away from Trinidad. When she became pregnant with a baby whose father she could not identify, she gave birth to Jeff, and he was quickly given up for adoption. And Jeff turned out to be a psychopath who fell in love with Maribel and colluded with Portia to not only break Donovan and Maribel up, but help Portia get Donovan to herself. In the end, the DNA test proved that Jeff was neither Pops Andy's or either of his brothers. In fact, he was their brother, because their daddy was the baby's daddy. Jira, India, and Jeff were all memories. And Miss Bernie had learned a hard lesson. A lesson that had almost cost her place in the family. But thankfully, Angela was forgiving, and Liza, Angela's new chief of operations, was able to step right in, shore up the staff at Vibrantly You, and give Miss Bernie an opportunity to come out of the closet. By the time the two ladies reached Beldam, Miss Bernie had given Mrs. Ali the cliff notes on her relationship with Miss Cheryl Spencer, Angela and Stephanie's mother, her relationship with Angela and Stephanie, and the difficulties she had from almost the time that Angela had relocated Vibrantly You from Denver to Dallas. When they got inside, they were pleasantly surprised to learn that Angela had made all the arrangements necessary for the two older ladies to have full court treatment. And they were having it all. Facials, manicures, pedicures, hairstyling, full body scrubs, and massages. It was a good thing that they'd arrived around 7:30 a.m. At that hour, the spa was only open to appointments. They did take in walk-ins, beginning at 8:30. And by the time the doors opened to the public, both ladies had battery-operated conditioning caps on, and their feet in the pedicure bowls. So when a walk-in customer came in and was sat down on the opposite side of Mrs. Ali, their conversation continued, just in lower tones. Neither woman was sharing anything that could be used against them or the families. Or so they thought. At about that same time, the roundtable meeting had begun. In attendance were all the necessary players, including the heads of the 5 families, their heads in training, including Salima and Stephanie by video conference, their right hands impatiently waiting in other rooms at the Lopez estate or breakout rooms in the video conference, were employees who needed to give reports or debriefs, including the St. James General and Bosch. Each of the families had provided details around their security plans and their efforts to run down information that they'd obtained during Operation Last Touch, including the number of people who were being surveilled, where they were, what they were doing, and predictions about the traffickers' next move. Meanwhile, over at Beldam, Miss Bernie and Mrs. Ali's pedicures were complete, and they were preparing to head back over to their stylist to have the deep conditioner rinse out and their hair styled. As they walked, they talked about their habits and hobbies. And as they walked, Mrs. Ali told Miss Bernie how she missed her favorite pastime. Miss Bernie said, "Girl, you ain't said nothing but a word. There's this little spot that Liza and I like to go to. Not only is it off the beaten path, but they have the best music and the best drinks." Mrs. Ali said, "Oh, that sounds so nice. It's too bad we can't get out and move around freely with all that's going on, 'cause I would love to go and check it out." Miss Bernie said, "Girl, bye. Liza and I are going out to dinner tonight. Not like we can't go nowhere. We just have to be careful. Go to places that's already been vetted and make sure we have security in tow. As a matter of fact, you and I should go by there tonight." Now, when the girl came around with the champagne, I saw you turn it down. "Is it because you don't drink?" Mrs. Ali said, "The lies you tell, I can put them back. I just don't do so in public, and I don't do it when I'm in her job." Then she explained to Miss Bernie the reason why she practices the wearing of the hijab. And Miss Bernie said, "I understand. Well, listen, Liza and I have our own little booth at the Blues Lounge that I was telling you about. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. Inside the booth is couches, and you can get real comfy and cozy. You have your own speaker where you can control the volume. We have our own personal wait staff, and the booth is surrounded on all sides with a mix of sheer and opaque curtains in the front. So you can see out as much or as little as you want, and you can control how much others can see inside. Sounds like the perfect place for you to let your hair down, so to speak. Now, whether you decide to come or not, Liza and I will be there. But we're going right after dinner, so if you do decide to come, you just can have security drop you off. They'll make sure that you get into the back, and I'll make sure the hostess knows to expect you. So they'll get you right to our booth. Mrs. Ali said, well, I'll discuss it with my son, and if he's okay, I'll be there, because Lord knows I need a night out. Meanwhile, at that same time, Donovan had a meeting out of town that he could not reschedule, and Portia had a doctor's visit. Maribel had agreed to go with Portia to the doctor in his place. There were some questions that he had, and he knew that his wife could get the answers. When Maribel arrived at the doctor's office, Portia was surprised to see her, because Donovan had failed to inform Portia when he visited her earlier in the week that Maribel would be the one meeting her at the doctor's office and not him. Portia was always escorted to the doctor's office in a van owned by the treatment facility that she was staying in, driven by one of the facility's staff members. Now, typically, the staff member would park the van, escort Portia inside the building and up to her doctor's office on the third floor of the building. Prior to Donovan finding out that Portia was still alive, either the Queen Mother or Angela would be waiting in the office for her. But on this occasion, they were running behind because of traffic. And if you've ever been to Dallas, you know how the traffic can be. So the driver pulled up out front in the circle, put on his hazards, and rushed Portia out of the vehicle. He'd hoped to be able to escort her upstairs, where Donovan would be waiting for her, and rush back down so that he could move the illegally parked van. But when they got inside, Maribel was waiting in the lobby instead of waiting in the doctor's office. Somehow in their extensive game of telephone, she hadn't gotten a tap that she was supposed to be waiting in the doctor's office. This was a part of the security protocol, not at all related to the current issue that the family was dealing with. It was related to the inpatient treatment facility's policies. Once Portia was in the care and custody of a medical professional and accompanied by a person on her approved guardian list, the transporter could not be held responsible for anything that transpired or anything that happened to Portia or because of Portia. So technically, the van driver wasn't completely violating the policy because he had made sure that Portia was being escorted by a person on her approved guardians list. But he was taking a huge risk by not ensuring that Portia was actually inside the doctor's office before he let her out of his eyesight, because he was a driver, but he was also trained in crisis management. So if Portia popped off, he could put hands on her. As usual, Portia started some mess, and Maribel did a pretty good job of maintaining her composure and making her position clear. She was only there because the contract between Donovan and Portia required that someone attend her doctor's appointments with her. Donovan had asked Maribel to go, and since both the Queen Mother and Angela would be at the roundtable meeting, it fell in Maribel's lap. But Maribel also figured that this could be an opportunity for her to show Portia that while she meant every word that she said in their one-on-one about laying her down if she got out of hand, she also needed her to know that in an effort to support her husband, she would support Portia through the pregnancy. And she planned to be an active stepmother. So when they got on that elevator, Portia was surprised to hear that Maribel did not plan on going to her doctor's appointment and pulling rank just because she was an OBGYN. She was going to follow Portia's lead. And while she'd like to be there for her examination and ultrasound, she would protect Portia's rights to privacy. Just as the conversation stopped, so did the elevator, but not on the third floor. It seemed to be stuck between the second and third, and Portia was losing it. Portia was claustrophobic and she hated elevators. The only reason why she'd gotten on that elevator is because it was only supposed to be going up 2 floors. So she was panicking and Maribel was doing everything she could to calm her down. Maribel said, Portia, you've got to relax. Take deep breaths. This level of anxiety is not good for you or your baby. This is a matter of mind over matter. Come on, deep breaths. Smell the roses. Blow out the candles. Smell the roses. Blow out the candles. Portia said, ain't no damn roses and it ain't nobody's damn birthday. Get me out of this elevator. And then there heard a voice say, lady, stay calm. We'll get you out of there in a minute. Over the little intercom in the elevator, Portia was relieved and Maribel was suspicious. Portia's doctor's office was in a medical complex, in the same building where Amira had gone for that DNA test. Maribel's office wasn't far from it, and while she'd never been stuck in this particular elevator, she'd been stuck in an elevator before. Neither maintenance nor the fire department ever arrived to get people out of an elevator that fast. As a matter of fact, Maribel had been so focused on calming Portia down that she had never engaged the button to request emergency assistance. So she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that it couldn't be the fire department. And unless the person who was coming over that speaker was the reason why that elevator was stuck, it was highly unlikely that maintenance would even be aware that there was a problem with the elevator that quickly. She looked at Portia and said, listen, something is not right. Portia said, you think we trapped in an elevator? Maribel said, lower your voice, calm down. I know what I know, and I know we need to work together if we want to get out of this situation alive, and I'm not talking about the elevator. Before Maribel could finish, Portia said, oh, and grabbed her abdomen. Maribel said, what? Portia said, I just got a crazy intense cramp. Maribel put her hands on Portia's belly and felt that it had tightened up. She said, I think you just had a contraction. That's not necessarily a big deal considering the circumstances, but you're going to have to push through that. Has anything odd been going on at the treatment facility? Any new people? Anybody asking any questions or saying anything that they shouldn't? Portia said, no, not really. I mean, what it is this new fine behind guard, and he been flirting with me heavy. Then the lights in the elevator went out, and Portia screamed. Once again, Maribel tried to calm her down. She said, it's just the light. The elevator isn't even moving, Portia. Portia said, I'm not talking about the light. My stomach. Maribel looked at her watch and illuminated the face and realized that pain was only 2 or 3 minutes since the first one. And that was not good. She grabs her phone out of her purse and realized she didn't have any bars. She had no way to know whether phones didn't work on this elevator or whether somebody was interfering with the signal. Whatever the case, the elevator had started moving and the lights were still out. So she knew she had to move quick. She reached in her purse and pulled out the baby 380 that she never left home without. Maribel knew that under Portia's clothes was a maternity belt, because she'd ordered it for her. Portia had been having a lot of lower back pain, and as opposed to allowing Portia to take the pain medication that she'd been prescribed, Maribel strongly suggested that she go with more homeopathic remedies. After all, that was her forte. So seeing the maternity belt in place, she tucked the baby 380 in it. Then she said, Portia, I am trusting you with my life. Please tell me you know how to use that. Portia said, hell yeah, but I'm so confused right now. Maribel said, when this elevator stops, you won't be. Then she quickly removed the bracelet from her wrist and put it in her pocket. She was wearing one of the bracelets that the Queen Mother had created that not only tracked the person's whereabouts, but also tracked their heart rate. She was hoping that despite the fact that her and the Queen Mother had a falling out, her bracelet was still being tracked, and somebody somewhere would get an alert that it had stopped tracking her heart rate. Maribel had been followed to the doctor's office by security. They were stationed outside, and there was a guard waiting for them upstairs outside of the doctor's office. The only reason why Maribel was in the lobby of the building was because Portia was late. She hadn't arrived when Maribel expected, so she told the security that she was going to head down to the lobby and wait there. And the security allowed her to do so after notifying the soldiers that were posed outside. Had Maribel left the building, security would have been in motion. She hadn't been gone long enough to raise any alarms. But she was hoping that the longer they were in that elevator, the more likely it would become that the guard in the doctor's office would become concerned. Either way, she was trying to cover all her bases. She said, when these doors open, you need to be in the most pain you've ever been in your life, you hear? We can't take the risk of anybody finding that pistol. And no matter what happens, we cannot allow ourselves to be taken from this building. So as soon as you have an opportunity, you pull it and you use it. I'm trusting you. Don't make me regret it. At that same time, the round table meeting was in full swing. Bosch had completed his debrief, and it was confirmed that he would be returning to True's security team. Angela didn't ask Bosch about Amira's disappearance, because she thought it was best that she had that conversation with him privately. When he was done, LJ began his debrief on the 16 Jamaicans that were taken alive at Angela and Stephanie's estate in Denver. They'd been questioned extensively and treated Five Family style. From what they gathered, the traffickers had approached Hanifa, and they ain't played no games. They told her straight up that they'd been working with Stanley and he'd been working with Amira. If she helped them, they'd get to the bottom of where Amira actually was. But she was definitely not overseas. Hanifa had told them that she couldn't help them, but her father could. She agreed to connect them with her father, with one caveat. She wanted to get back on Salima. She wanted whoever was responsible for Amira's disappearance to pay, and she wanted Wise to wish he never let his wife put her hands on her. When LJ was done, Salima ran down her plan. The team of female finishers that she sent to New York had provided her with a full report. One of the higher-ups in Taryn's organization had a meeting with a new supplier. So it was clear that Taryn's plan was to work with the trafficking organization to get the get-back for his daughter and himself, cut ties with the Baptistes, and find a new way to feed his family. When Salima told the round table that she planned to send in an unnamed covert operative, her plan was approved. Sincere was shocked when his dating life became the next topic of conversation. Catherine said, so Sincere had a date with a woman who's connected to the families who could potentially become his wife. Unfortunately, it looks like he may have put her on the trafficker's radar. Sincere said, what? Catherine turned to Javier and told him to have the general, who was in charge of his security plan, to enter the room. And when Ezra entered the room, Catherine asked him to detail what he and his team had discovered. He said, when we followed Sincere's date, when they left the ice cream parlor, our surveillance was interrupted because she had security of her own. Catherine looked at Manny and said, Sincere's date was Natalia Jimenez. Manny smiled and nodded. Then he looked at Sincere and said, that's not a woman you want to play with. Make yourself ready to be a husband or leave her alone. And I won't tell you twice. And Sincere just sat quietly. Then Ezra said, only a part of our team was stopped. The part that continued the pursuit picked up that she had another tail. With a few maneuvers, we were able to intercept them, but we did not engage. It was clear that they weren't nearly as good at surveillance as we are. So we hung back, but kept an eye on them. As it stands, we still have a tail on the tail. When Sincere left the ice cream parlor, he had a tail too. We were similarly able to interrupt their plan. They were clearly not assigned to make any kind of moves. They were gathering information. Now, so are we. When Manny asked, "And what's the plan?" Ezra said, "They have another date tonight. I believe it's best that we let that happen. Natalia's security is already going to make sure she goes in the back. My suggestion is that we send in a covert operative who looks a lot like Natalia through the front door of that restaurant. Since they already think that Sincere is sloppy and he's green." Sincere sucked his teeth, and the general continued, "We'll have Sincere go in the front. They'll enter separately, but they'll leave together. He'll walk her to a waiting vehicle, identical to the one that Natalia currently drives. Since they have no idea that Natalia has security, we'll let them follow the covert operative, and she'll do what she does best."